We are eager for a fresh experience. We crave life-changing journeys. We desire the extraordinary. We long to climb to the top of the mountain, to feel the warm sunrise, and to dive deep under the surface of the water. We have an appetite that must be satisfied deep within our souls to experience a story worth retelling. We are daring to make discoveries. We seek to solve the puzzle of our personalities. We are crazy compelled towards our callings, and we're driven by destiny. Who are we? We're ordinary people with big dreams, and that makes us dangerous. We believe in belonging. Love is no place for loneliness. We are fiercely committed to create a place for people to belong immediately, where authentic relationships are forged, where friends feel like family, where experiences and discoveries are made together. Life was never meant to be lived alone, so we aim to live it with as many as we can. So this is a call to you, the dreamers, the philosophers, the scientists, the engineers, the artists, the professionals, the normal somebodies who want more out of life. Do you want an adventure? Do you want your life to be a story worth retelling? Imagine if you truly experienced life, if you really discovered yourself, and if you found a place where you belong.
Well, hello and welcome again, everybody. My name is Greg Giamalva, and I have the privilege of being the lead pastor here at State Line Church. Guys, 2 years. It is absolutely amazing that we've been around for 2 years, but not only that, we've been in this building, our 1-year anniversary in this building today, which is just mind-numbing, right? Yeah, for sure. We couldn't have expected or planned this. We're not that good, but God is. So we knew that God had a plan for this church, and we were just going to get out of his way. For those of you who don't know, we are a Jesus church, man. We're just all about Jesus here. We're going to brag about Jesus. We're going to talk about Jesus. This guy loves Jesus. We all love Jesus, all right? So that's what we're excited about. And here's kind of what's crazy is I think about the last 2 years. It's one thing to celebrate the last 2 years and be excited, but we're just getting started, people, right? We got many years in front of us of doing God's work and reaching the lost and being a light in this community for the good news of Jesus Christ. And here's what's crazy about this cool building is this is a great building, but people don't care about great steeples. They care about great people. And when people brag about State Line Church, and I hear it all the time, they always say, hey, man, I hear about your church. I hear about their generosity and how kind they are and how giving they are. I hear about how much they're trying to show a genuine love for Jesus Christ. And when they're saying that and when they're bragging about that, they're not saying, hey, that's a really cool building. They're saying you are an awesome group of people. You guys are out there doing it and living it. And I am so privileged. I really am so privileged to be able to pastor this church. It is such an honor for me. And it's such a blessing for me. And like I said, I can't wait to see what the next few years hold as State Line Church just continues to be a Jesus church and we see what Jesus wants to do in and through us, both in this community and in our own personal lives as a collective. I'm really excited. Now, one of the things that churches are kind of typically known for are their signs, their signage. There's some funny signs out there that sometimes churches will put out, but sometimes there's some signs that have some meanings that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. Or sometimes churches will put signs out there that can even be a little bit mean, can't they? And so I thought, not to make fun of any church, we actually blocked out the names of the churches, but let's just maybe poke fun at Christian culture here for a second and look at some church signs. These are real church signs. So here's this one. It says, tweet others as you would like to be tweeted. This is trying too hard to be relevant, okay? And some of you are like, I don't get it. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Let's take a look at the next one. Get behind me satin. It's a terrible fabric. It really is. I'm a poly cotton blend guy, so I totally understand. All right, the next sign. Whoever stole our AC units, keep one. It is hot where you're going. Oh, snap! Somebody's mad. That's just a really nice thing to put outward into the community, isn't it? All right, let's look at another sign here. Do you know what hell is? Come hear our preacher. We're probably not going to put that up on the outside of our building, so we'll just leave that be. So maybe we'll get a little inspiration and figure out what to say. So that's it for the church signs. Now, when we first got started, I don't know if you guys know this. I'm actually kind of curious. How many of you were here for our very first service? Wow. Probably less than half the room were here for our very first service over 2 years ago, which once again just blows me away as God just keeps bringing people to this church. But when we were in our very first service, at our very first year, we met at Rockford Christian High School, and we were renting Rockford Christian High School. And we had an amazing team of volunteers that had to set up and tear down every single week, and we do not miss that at all. But because we had to set up and tear down every single week, we were limited with the signage that we could put out. But there was one sign in particular. It was a sign that we put out in our lobby, and it had 3 words on it. There's actually a replica of that sign that's hanging right now on the side of the hallway right here, as well as those 3 words are actually hanging in our lobby right now. And some of you are like, huh? There's words hanging in our lobby? Yes, people. There are words out there. All right, so look alive. I know it's cold. Sidebar, why did we plant a church? Why in Rockford? Can we move this whole thing to San Diego? Would you guys all come with me? Let's get out of here, man. Man, we are really serving Jesus. I just want you to know. We love Jesus here, all right? And so we hung these signs, and the reason we hung these signs with these few simple words is because these were words that we wanted to be true about us from the very beginning. And so these words weren't just true about us from the beginning, but they're true about us today, and these words will be true about us in the future. And so this morning, we're just going to walk through these 3 words and what they actually mean for the church, and I'm going to give some definitions for them. And so the first one is really simple. It's belong. Belong. Let me give a definition for this. To fit in and be a part of something. To be loved, wanted, and valued. State Line Church from the very beginning has been, is, and will be a place where anyone, and when I say anyone, I mean anyone can belong. Doesn't matter how you dress. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank or do not have. It doesn't matter what race you are. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, yellow, red, purple. If you're purple, you might want to get that checked out, okay? You might need to go see your doctor. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. Doesn't matter how you vote. It doesn't matter what lifestyle you have. Doesn't matter if you're keto or gluten-free, all right? My wife's got me on the keto diet. Pray for me. It's hard, okay? But it does not matter at all. It doesn't matter when you walk into this building if life is going great. Everything is coming up sunshine. It doesn't matter if you walk into this building and your life has been a train wreck. That life has been really hard. No matter who you are, when you walk in through these doors of this building, you belong. You belong here. You will be wanted, you will be loved, and you will be valued. You know, very early on in our very first year in this building, one of our very first weekends in this service, we had a moment where a homeless man actually pulled up to the front of the church, these doors right out here, and he had a bike with a big cart attached to it with just a bunch of stuff. And so he comes inside and he was looking for money. He wanted money so he could buy himself a sleeping bag. And so we just started talking to him, and here was what was kind of interesting as we talked to this guy, is he wasn't even nice. I remember thinking, shouldn't a homeless guy be nice? Like, look, I'm no judgment. If that's your occupational choice, here's a pro tip, though. At least be nice when you're asking people for stuff, right? But he was kind of cranky and a little bit entitled. He wasn't very friendly, but I love what our team did. Our host team came around him. They sat down with him. They wanted to listen to him and listen to his story. We gave him coffee. We gave him donuts. We hung out with him. And then we gave him some gift cards that we happened to have to Walmart so he could go and buy himself a sleeping bag. But then this is what really blew me away. There's a guy on our team by the name of Tracy. And Tracy comes up to me and he says, hey, Greg, hey, at my house, I actually have a sleeping bag, and it's a pretty nice one. We don't use it very often. I think I might just run home really quick and get it for this guy, and then he can use the gift card for other things. I was like, no, Tracy, listen, man, wow, that's above and beyond. You don't have to do that. And he's like, no, I know I don't have to, but I really want to. And so he goes home during the middle of the services, races to his house, he gets this sleeping bag, he comes back to the church, he gives this guy the sleeping bag. I remember looking at the sleeping bag and I was like, that's a nice sleeping bag. Right? This wasn't one of those like Coleman Walmart jobbers with like 2 like yoga mats sewn together. This thing was legit. I remember thinking, I want that, Tracy, don't give that to him. Like, that's a nice sleeping bag, right? And so he gives it to him, and I just remember thinking, what would compel Tracy to do that? That is absolutely amazing that he would go above and beyond for this man. Well, it's this right here. He just, whether he intuitively understood it or not, he just believed in the principle of belonging. That if you walk through these doors, we're going to love you. And he's living out this verse, Romans 12, 9 through 10. Don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. You see, Tracy, he wasn't just being kind. He was honoring him. He was giving him a piece of dignity, a piece of respect. He was doing his best to live that verse out and to own that verse. And so I want us collectively to be the type of church that lives that out, that we don't just pretend. This isn't a church for fakes or phonies, man. We just want to be real people who genuinely love Jesus and love others. And when they walk through that door, they're just going to get love. People need love. We need a reformation on kindness. And that's who State Line is, and that's who we're going to continue to be. Now, unfortunately, this has not been true amongst churches throughout the centuries. As a matter of fact, if you were to study the first church in the book of Acts, you'll see that people loved to debate for years and years and years who was in and who was out. And church people sometimes love to debate who's in the in crowd and who's in the out crowd. And so you see in the book of Acts what happens as the early converts started coming to Christianity. The first converts were actually Jewish converts. But because of most of the first converts were Jewish, they actually had a common background, a common lineage, a common way of doing things, a common way of operating. And so when they showed up for a Christian church to worship Jesus, they didn't even skip a beat because they were used to being around each other. But the message of Jesus, the good news, wasn't just for the Jews. It was for everybody. And so this good news, it starts traveling, right? It starts spreading. People start talking about the resurrection of Jesus. And as word starts to spread, people start getting saved. They're giving their life to Jesus. They hear the stories about Jesus and they're surrendering. Well, what happens is these Jewish converts all of a sudden hear this and they're like, whoa, wait a minute. These people don't look like us. These people don't vote like us. These people don't dress like us. They don't eat like us. They don't behave like us. Whoa, let's get a committee together and decide if these people can follow Jesus. Because I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if I like this. And guess what? They actually got a committee together. This is true. One of the very first church committees you see in Acts chapter 15, and all the bigwigs of the early church get together. And they're all powwowing. And they're talking about who's in and who's out. And the Apostle Paul stands up. Now, the Apostle Paul was a well-respected Jewish leader who had a radical conversion to Christianity. And he stands up and he says this in Acts 15, verse 19. It is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult. We should not add rules. We should not make them behave a certain way. We don't have to make them dress a certain way. We don't have to make them eat a certain way. It is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles. Who are the Gentiles? Anyone that's not Jewish, who are turning to God. And you know what's crazy about this very first committee meeting? They all agreed, which is maybe the craziest miracle of all in the early church. They all agreed. And they said, you know what, Paul? We agree. You're right. Because this good news, this message of Jesus, we didn't earn it. We don't deserve it. It is for everyone, and everyone needs to hear about it. And then all of a sudden, the church just grows like gangbusters because they were willing to take the good news to everyone. And aren't you glad they agreed? Amen. Because that means you and I get to be in too. And so it's my judgment as the lead pastor of State Line that we won't make it difficult for anyone who walks through those doors. If they want to seek and learn and understand more about Jesus Christ, anyone is welcome, regardless of what they look like, regardless of where they're coming from. And if for some reason that bothers you, if for some reason you don't like the idea that people can belong, then you're going to hate heaven. Because it's going to be a lot of different sizes, shapes, colors, backgrounds, tribes, nations, tongues, right? It's for everybody. And don't forget this. Long before you could ever belong to a club, long before you could ever have a social membership, long before you could ever belong to a gym, long before you could ever belong to some committee somewhere, you belong to God. You are God's creation. God made you and God knows you. And so don't ever forget, you don't belong to some club. You don't belong to some world. You don't belong to your sin. You don't belong to your past. You don't belong to your addiction. You don't belong to that relationship. You belong to God. And when you allow yourself to belong to things other than God, you're going to get misused and you're going to get mistreated because you weren't designed to belong to anything other than Him. That's the way He made it. And so you need to know that you are His child, His prize, and He loves you. He has chosen you. You are His beloved. He cares about you, which is why we so desperately want people to believe in the name of Jesus Christ, because that's the name by which all of us must be saved. Now, this is important. A lot of times churches kind of mix this up sometimes. They say you can believe before you belong. You better believe in what we believe in before you can belong here. No. You can belong here and not believe what we believe. It's always a safe place to come. But make no mistake, people, we have an agenda. I'm going to shoot straight with you right now from the jump. You know what you walked into, right? Okay, so the agenda is really simple. We want you to believe. Why? Why do we want you to believe? So we can boost our membership somehow? Guys, we don't even have membership, okay? We want you to believe because we believe this definition of believe is true. To have a firm and wholehearted conviction that Jesus is true, real, and worth it. He's worth it. We believe that at the deepest part of who we are, that this thing that we gather for on Sunday mornings, it's not fantasy land. It's not make-believe. It's not some crazy story that someone came up with. We believe at the core of who we are that it's true, that it's real, that it's worth it. That the most famous scripture in the entire Bible, John 3:16, is real. Let me read it to you. You've all heard it, but let's read it again. John 3:16. For God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through Him. Whoever believes in Him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. God created this world, populated it. Sin comes in and breaks God's creation. But God didn't create this world and then spin it on its axis to watch it burn. God didn't come into this world to judge it or condemn it. God is coming down as Jesus Christ to save it, to save you from sin, to save you from death, to save you from hell, to save you from loneliness, to save you from meaninglessness, to save you. So often we think God came down or somehow God is looking at us and He wants to condemn us. Do you understand that there's nothing about God right now that wants to condemn you? He's trying to save you. It's the goodness and the kindness of God that is trying to win us back. He loves you. He loves you if you would only believe, because the linchpin way, the catalyst behind how God saves us is behind this verb right here, believe. For it says in the book of Romans that if we believe in our heart, confess with our mouth that Jesus is the Son of God, that He's real, it's true, and that it's worth it, He saves us. Now, some of you right now may be sitting there and wondering, well, how do I do that, Greg? How do I believe? I don't even know where to begin. And I want to say this, that maybe it's not as hard as we think it is. Maybe we're overcomplicating it, because I believe at the core of all of us, we were all created by God, whether you realize it or not. You were all created by God with the ability to believe in and worship things bigger and outside of yourself. Why else does every kid believe in Santa Claus? It's in their DNA to do so. You were hardwired to believe in something and to worship something outside of yourself. And as we get older, we tend to just misdirect our worship. We may not say we're worshiping it. We may not cognitively understand upstairs in our brain that we're worshiping it, but we do. We're putting our hope and our trust and our belief and our worship in other things. So as you look at our culture, think about it. People worship celebrities. They worship athletes. They worship sports teams. They worship activities. They worship social media culture. They worship beauty. They worship fame. They worship fortune. right? They worship money. They worship success. They look at these things and they're like, if I could only have more of these. And we orchestrate our entire lives around chasing after these things, don't we? Because why? Because you were made to worship. You were created to believe in something outside of yourself. It's actually a byproduct of your DNA. It's just when you misdirect it and you chase after these things, it's going to leave you empty. It's going to leave you broken. It's going to leave you confused because it can't answer life's biggest questions, who you are and why you're here. Only Jesus can do that. Only Jesus is worthy of our worship and of our belief. But we get confused sometimes. And so as you're sitting there and you're wondering, well, how do I begin? Where do I begin? I still don't know if I can believe. Well, you do what Jesus told some of the early followers to do. If you look at the Gospels, which are the first 4 books of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, a lot of times some of these disciples would come up to Jesus. Even some of John the Baptist's disciples would come up to Jesus, or they'd come up to some of Jesus' followers, and they'd say, who is this dude? Who's dude over here doing all this stuff, right? Who is this guy talking about being the Son of God or whatever else, right? And they'd say, well, listen, come and see. Just come and see. Come and see. You want to investigate it? Come and see. You want to know who he is? Come and see. You want to learn more about it? Come and see. You got questions for it? Come and see. You want to poke some holes in it? Come and see. Come on. Come and look. Come and investigate for yourself. Come and check it out. Follow this Jesus around a little bit and then come to your own conclusion and see if he's worthy of not only your belief, but of your worship. And what happened is people would come and see. What happened is what would grow in them is faith. And faith is oftentimes the missing ingredient that unlocks our belief. That's why it says in Hebrews 11:6, it is impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek them. You see, God will reward the sincere seeker. If you come and see, or better yet, you come and seek, right? If you come and investigate, you come and look, you come and see if this is real, if this is true, if it's worth it all. God will begin to build in you faith, which will unlock belief. But don't be lazy. Don't just write it off and say it can't be real and then go about your life. So many people don't spend the time to investigate things that really matter, and you're missing it. So come and see if it's real. Now, let me talk to those in the room who would say they believe already. Now, many people will say they believe in things all the time, right? Like right now, I believe the Cubs are going to win the World Series this year. We are due, everybody, right? We are due. We've had 3 years. I'm greedy now. I want more. I want championships. I want rings, okay? I want to go to the trophy room and see the World Series trophy. I believe this year Cubs are going to win it all. Now, if you were to say, Greg, put your money where your mouth is, would you bet your entire life savings on that? No. I mean, maybe I don't believe as much as I said I believed. Maybe I don't believe as much as I think I believed, right? Because your belief, it's not a matter of what you say you believe. It's not even a matter of what you think you believe. True belief is always proven by your actions. Your core beliefs will always be proven by how you live. It's why you don't have to convince yourself that you believe in gravity. Gravity is a core belief. We all share it. You didn't wake up this morning and say, Lord, help me believe in gravity today, right? You didn't have to convince yourself or read a book on it to see if it was true or not true. You believe in gravity, and here's how I know you believe in it, because you won't jump out a window today. Your actions will prove what you believe. Now, I saw Francis Chan do something that I think helps illustrate what true belief is. And so Tyler's going to come up here really quick, and he's going to help me illustrate this. Now, how many of you guys, when you were a kid, had a BB gun by chance? Anyone? Okay. I had a BB gun, and I had one of those really, killer BB guns. Oh, let me pull this bad boy out. I had a BB gun that you had to pump up 10 times just to determine, if you wanted to blow a hole all the way through the cat or just maim it.
Jeez.
Right? No, don't judge me. I was a lost child, okay? I was a pagan youth, okay? So, but maybe I didn't do that. Maybe I didn't. Sorry, Jesus. Anyways, but this right here, this is a classic. This is a Red Ryder BB gun. You'll shoot your eye out. All right, now how many of you guys believe I could hit this balloon right now from standing right here? You guys believe that? Let's give it a whirl. Oh, this is happening, people. This is what you showed up in the cold for, right here. What?
Yay!
I'm amazing. I shot the balloon. Okay. Now listen. I've got another balloon here. If I were to put this balloon, pin it back up on the wall right here, how many of you believe I could hit this balloon again? How many? All right, almost everyone in the room. Some of you are like, no, I'm not raising my hand no matter what. I'm on to you people, okay? Now, how many of you believe so much that I could hit this balloon from where I'm standing there that you'd be willing to hold it in your hand like this? Okay, a few of you.
Oh, wow.
How many of you believe... They know I'm Sicilian. I'm lethal with a rifle. How many of you believe so much that I could hit this balloon from here that you're willing to hold it in your teeth? Anyone? Anyone? Tony, come on up here.
Tony, what's wrong with you?
Come over here, Tony. Now,
You
Tony,
have
listen.
faith.
Tony
Nobody
believes in me.
has this much faith.
Will you hold this for me real
Oh.
quick? Now, Tony, this is just procedural. I need you to sign this waiver really quick, okay? So go ahead and put your signature right here. It's just, don't worry about the waiver, everyone. It's 15 pages or so. Just saying you wouldn't sue Tyler.
I must not have been a part of this meeting.
No, yeah, you missed it.
Why am I holding
No,
a gun
you're
right
good.
now?
Okay, here's your balloon. All right, now go ahead and stand right in front of the foam board here.
What's happening right now?
You don't want to stand there. Here you go. Right here. Are you ready?
Oh, my goodness. All right, well, this is a great last service at State Line, guys.
I can't believe he's doing this right now. I can't do it. Go ahead and take a seat. Oh my gosh, he was like, I'm so into that. I love that so much. All right, you can take the board down.
What in the world? All right.
Give it up for Tony and Tyler, everybody. How many true believers were in the room? Right? Was everybody who raised their hand a true believer? Were they willing to put their money where their mouth is, better yet, their mouth where the balloon was? Or were there just a few? A few who said, you know what? I believe. I trust that he can do it. I believe that he can hit it. And so, yeah, John 3:16, it says, if you believe, you shall be saved. But true belief will always show itself by the way we live, by our actions. That we believe so much that this is true and that this is real and that it is worth it, that we're willing to hold our faith in between our teeth. Jesus, no matter what the cost, no matter what the price, doesn't matter how good my life is going, doesn't matter if everything's going great or not, doesn't matter what's going on around me, doesn't matter what my relationships look like. I believe, good or bad, thick or thin, that this is real. And if you say you believe and you follow Jesus, then shouldn't your life look a little different? Like, shouldn't there be a little something about your lifestyle that's a little bit unique? I mean, shouldn't you spend your money a little bit different and be a little bit more generous with your money? Shouldn't you open your home up a little bit different? Shouldn't you talk about people at work a little bit different? Shouldn't you love your neighbor a little bit different? Right? Shouldn't it be reflected in your lifestyle and in your actions? Now, the Apostle Paul wrote a letter to a guy named Titus. This was a Gentile convert. He wrote a letter, and in it, he was talking about people who claim to believe in God but fail to do good and live this truth out. And this is what Paul said, Titus 1:16. It says, they claim to know God, but by their actions they deny him. They are detestable, disobedient, and unfit for doing anything good. Dang, Paul. Yikes, right? And so my desire as the pastor of State Line Church is that we're not just a group of people who say we believe and then deny him by how we live when we walk outside these doors, but that we truly believe and do our best by his grace and by his power to live it out in our day-to-day lives. Because how does it make any sense to say you believe in Jesus and not have it change anything about the way you live? It didn't make sense to the Apostle Paul, and you know who else it doesn't make sense to? your neighbors, your friends, your family members who are unbelievers. Look at this quote from Brennan Manning. The greatest single cause of atheism in the world today are Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips and walk out the door and deny him by their lifestyle. This is what an unbelieving world simply finds unbelievable. So let's us at State Line be a church that truly believes at the core of who we are, that this Jesus thing isn't a story, it's not make-believe, that John 3:16 is real. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Let's live that out so much that we're willing to stick it between our teeth. That we will say, Jesus, no matter what, you're worth it all. I'm in. I'm all the way in. And as you believe in Jesus in that type of way, then something amazing starts to happen. That's when you start to become. Let me read a definition of become. To change. To begin to be something different and new. Another very famous verse in the Bible, 2 Corinthians 5:17, says, this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old is gone. A new life has begun. What an amazing promise. Anyone who belongs to Jesus will become a new person, a new creation, brand new in him. Now, oftentimes, because of our own brokenness, when we hear that we can become something, what happens is out of our own brokenness, sometimes we equate that to being perfect. That we put pressure on ourselves, don't we? Well, this just means I got to be perfect. This just means God's got more expectations of me. This just means I got some hula hoops I got to jump through. If you try to live perfect, okay, what's going to happen as you try to strive for perfection is you will be all about rules and behavior modification and nothing will change in your heart. If you're only striving to become perfect, what's happening is you're trying to do things for God instead of doing things with God. God doesn't need you to do things for him. He's asking you to do things with him. He wants to be with you. So it's never been about perfection. It's always about progress. God's not demanding perfection from you because there's only one perfect one, and that's Jesus Christ. And so if you don't have to act perfect, think about this for a second. If you don't have to live perfect, doesn't that take the pressure off, actually? Can't we breathe a little bit? We realize we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be religious. We don't have to follow all these rules perfectly all of the time. We just live in the grace of Jesus Christ. We just live in a relationship and community and commune with him. We just breathe in him. We exhale him. And so often what happens is because we're striving so much to be perfect, and in our religiosity, we want to compare ourselves to each other. And so what happens is we start grading ourselves on a curve. We start comparing ourselves to others. I'm not as bad as that guy, right? I'm not as good as her. I got some work to do. I'm no Adolf Hitler. He's a terrible human being. But I'm no Mother Teresa, right? And so we have this curve, and we're grading ourselves on the curve. But do you understand that Jesus doesn't grade on a curve? He grades on a cross, right? It doesn't matter where you find yourself on this spectrum. No matter what, you're not good enough. So it's all about what he did on the cross. But here's what's powerful about the cross, and we miss this sometimes in the church. We really do. We think that the cross is all about just salvation. Now, make no mistake, right? The cross is salvation, right? It's the hope of the nations. It's that we would be saved. But it's also not just about salvation, but it's about transformation. It's that we have grace not only for salvation, but we have grace to change. That not only can we be saved, but change is possible. And so if we're becoming new and more like Jesus, it's because of the perfect one perfecting us, not because of our behavior, not because of our choices, not because of our actions. It's just out of our surrender. It's that we surrender to God and say, God, do a work in me. I will live life with you, right? Now, this is important to know. If you're going to become a new creation, though, you have to want to become a new creation. Very famous story in John chapter 5. It's one of my favorite stories, actually, in the entire Bible, and I've taught this story here at State Line before. And it's about a man, a lame man or a crippled man at the pool of Bethesda. And we don't have time to go through the whole story, but let me just read this one verse here. John 5:5 and 6. One of the men lying there at this pool had been sick for 38 years. That's a long time. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, "Would you like to get well?" Now, I've read this story, I don't know, countless times. I've read it a lot. And every time I read it, even though I kind of know some of the truth and application behind it, I still think, Jesus, that's a dumb question, right? Do you want to get well? Duh! I've been laying on this mat for 38 years. My friends have to pick me up and carry me to take me to the bathroom, to get me around town. I have to beg for money. I haven't been able to walk, right? I can't do anything that the people around me are going to do. What do you think, dude with the beard and long hair? You think I want to get well? That's a stupid question. Yeah, I want to get well. But you got to remember something. When Jesus asks us a question, it's not because he needs information, okay? The dude just knows stuff, all right? He doesn't need information. When he asks us a question, it's because he's asking us to look within ourselves. As I look within my own life, as I look at the lives of some of my friends and family members, as I look at the lives of some of the people in this church, the reality is they don't want to get well. They've been laying on the mat for so long that they're comfortable there. They don't want to change. They don't want to be new. That's why this quote from C.S. Lewis is so powerful. Man, you could sit and ponder on this one for a while. A familiar captivity is frequently more desirable than an unfamiliar freedom. Now, I want you to notice something. Jesus, he didn't ask the man, who did this to you? He didn't ask the man, why did you end up this way? He didn't ask the man, whose fault was it? Now, that's not to say that Jesus doesn't care about our stories. Of course, Jesus cares about our stories. But regardless of how your story happened, it's up to you to answer the question for your own self. Do you want to get well? Do you want to change? Do you want to become new? And so often, I think, in American Christianity, I can't speak for the global church, so often I really think that we are okay enough with Jesus to let him in for salvation. It's like, Jesus, you can come and save my soul, but we won't let Jesus in to heal our broken heart. We won't let Jesus in to heal our broken past. We won't let Jesus in to heal our shame. We won't let Jesus in to change our mind. Because salvation, that's one-sided. That's all about Jesus. But a transformation, that takes work. You got to partner with the grace of God. You got to want it. And some people just aren't willing to go there. But if you let him in, he will heal your broken heart. You got to peel back all the layers of the onion. Ezekiel 36 says this, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. You see, you can become the person you are supposed to be. You can, by God's grace and by God's power. You have grace for forgiveness of sins, and you have grace for transformation to become a new creation. You just got to be willing to surrender. Surrender that past. Surrender that addiction. Surrender that abuse. Surrender that shame. Surrender it to him. Let's not just trust in Jesus alone for salvation, but let's trust in him too to be a new creation, right? And here's what's crazy. You start living these three things out in your everyday life, watch out. God will start flipping the script on your story. Things and the way you see the world will just be different. The way you interact with people will be different. The pep in your step when you go to that job you hate will be different. Everything's different when you start living these three things out. We have a couple in our church, their name is Brad and Ashley, and they started coming right from the beginning, and they've just let Jesus into their story. They've surrendered to him, and they started living these three things out. And when they first started coming to State Line, they had some problems and issues with their relationship, with their marriage, and they've just seen Jesus do an amazing thing. So why don't you take a look at their story?
I mean, we were essentially asleep. We were not awake. We were just sleepwalking through life, and I think he wanted to wake us up and get us on the right path. I'm Ashley.
I'm Brad.
And we've been coming to State Line since the very beginning, the very first service.
About 2 years now.
Yep, and then we've been married 8 years. I think what brought us to State Line was a post on social media, and then I kind of filled you in about it. And you were kind of picky about what churches we should go to, but we had been wanting to join one for quite a while.
Yeah, and it was hard for me to jump on board with any church, really, because I hadn't been going to church since 8th grade, I think. Life got really busy, and it wasn't really a priority. So it was a big step making that first trip here.
It was ironic, too, because our marriage had been not the greatest, but we didn't really realize, like, we thought everything was fine just because we had been together forever and we were best friends, and I don't know, but it just wasn't where I wanted it to be. And it's really crazy because I just felt this pull, like, now is the time to get into church. And so I feel like he was telling us, you need to reconnect with your faith, because I think he wanted to help us heal our marriage and just, be the people that he wants us to be. I mean, we were essentially asleep. We were not awake. We were just sleepwalking through life, and I think he wanted to wake us up and get us on the right path.
When we first came to State Line, I really felt invited, after coming to church once or two times. It really turned into like, I can't wait till next week. I can't wait till next week.
I think the way that God is using this church for our marriage is we were missing a huge part. And that was our faith in Jesus. And I think it has helped us grow with forgiveness towards each other, with just being kind to each other, helps our marriage, helps our interactions with other people, helps us be more open and vulnerable with each other, with other people, things like that.
Models a good relationship for our kids and for our friends that are around us too. I see the growth in me where I used to be very introverted, and now I want to go and find other people to talk to. I felt like I was the only imperfect person, but like being surrounded by people that are like, yeah, we have problems. Yeah, I've dealt with this too. It's real encouraging to be able to like put in my 2 cents and really see how many people's journeys are a lot like mine.
I was never able to identify as a child of Christ. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to identify myself in that way. I didn't know what God wanted me to do. I didn't know how to properly listen to him, how to properly talk to him. And so I feel like the relationship was so not what he wanted.
With that, growing here and doing as much as that we can with the church and stuff like that, I wanted to get baptized here surrounded by people that I really, really love and that I know will be a good support system for me, for us, for one another. And it was nice to be able to make that choice.
There's been many weeks where we've come in and we have had a hard week and we felt a little lost, and it'll be about forgiveness, or the message will be about, being kind to one another, or, just very relevant topics in the moment. And it's like, oh man, we needed that. And it sets us on a new path for the week. And so I feel like our whole lens of life has changed, and my whole scope has changed and kind of redirected to putting him first, to praying first. None of that would have ever happened without us coming here and, finding our faith again, basically. We wouldn't have any of that without this.
Here's what's cool about Brad and Ashley's story. So over the last 2 years, and they're really gifted photographers, and they have a really cool photography business, but Jesus has done so much personally in their own lives and so much in their marriage that they just felt a calling to go back to school to become marriage counselors themselves, which is just awesome. Because they're just realizing, like, hey, there's more to this journey than just living life. We've got to live life not just for ourselves, but for Jesus. And as they've let Jesus come into their story, he's flipped the script. And they're just saying, Jesus, how can I be a light for you? How can I live for you? What do you want me to do? Open-handed, Lord, it's your life. I'm going to live it for you. And it's pretty cool to see what God has done through them because they're just living out those words. Belong, believe, become. Centered on Jesus Christ. That's what it's all about here. That's why I said from the beginning, this is a Jesus church. It's who we brag about. It's who we're excited about. It's who we talk about. It's the hope for the world. It's the hope for the nations. It's the hope for Rockford. It's the hope for you. It's the one thing that we all truly need at the core of who we are. And he really has done mighty things throughout this church in the last 2 years. but he is just getting started. There's more work to do. And as he's done mighty things in this church, it's not that he's done mighty things in a building. He's done mighty things through a group of people. You see, State Line has been and always will be a group of people, a body that leaves these four walls and lets the good news of what Jesus is doing in us leak out of us everywhere we go. And so here's the thing. If you say, you know what, I'm committed to living out those three words, not perfection, progress, right? I'm committed to the best of my ability by God's grace to live out those three words as a part of this church and as a part of State Line. Then what we're going to do, I have those three signs now spread throughout the room. They're here, here, and here, and there's markers. And you may have even already seen it from the last service. There's names on there. But as an act of faith of saying, I'm in. I'm going to live this out. I'm going to live these three words out. Then during this next song, I want you to get up and go ahead and sign those signs. And you can come back to your seats because we're going to sing a couple songs together. Now, for those of you in this room, if you've never put your trust in Jesus Christ, you've never surrendered, and you're sitting here right now, I want you to know this. It's never too late. And at any moment in time, he's right there. All you have to do is just call out to him and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for doing life alone. I'm sorry for my sins. I believe that you died on the cross for the forgiveness of my sins. And I believe that you went into the tomb, and 3 days later, you rose again so that I could have eternal life. You just pray that in your heart. And then as an act of faith, guess what you can do? You can get up and sign these two and say, you know what, I'm in. I'm in as an act of faith. And even if you're here and you're like, I'm just not there yet. Remember, you belong. You don't have to believe what we believe to belong here. But if you're willing to be on the journey, you can sign the signs too. And so I'm going to pray for us, and then we're going to take those next few minutes to do this together. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, so grateful for those three words that you've given this church as a model for us to live by. We really want this to be your church where people can belong. That no matter where they come from, they can feel the warmth and love and acceptance of Jesus Christ in this room, in this house, through this church family living it out. We want people to believe we know you're the hope of the nations. We know that you're the answer. You know that you're the way, the truth, and the life. And we want them to believe in you. And so I pray you'd stir it in our hearts to truly believe. And we want everyone to become. We don't want to be a group of people who just talk about faith on Sundays and then live Monday through Saturday different. We want to live it out Monday through Saturday by your grace and by your power to become who you've made us to be, so that we're not just doing things for you, but we're doing things with you, God. And so by your grace right now, just move throughout this room, Lord, and speak to our hearts. In the name of Jesus, I pray.